Honourable member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour to rise in this House today to debate this important issue. Listening to the debate thus far today in the House, hearing the Parliamentary Secretary, for example, talk about the amendments that his government is bringing in at the report stage, the amendments that they're rejecting from the committee, it made me think of one of the great orators that this House has ever seen, that of the Right Honourable Arthur Meehan. One of this country's prime ministers, a relatively short-lived prime minister, but prime minister nonetheless, who was actually from my home area of Perth County. Arthur Meehan once gave a speech, and I think his words are valuable to the debate we're having here at hand. He was speaking of Edmund Burke, one of the great British thinkers, and he said, "A ministry must yield to Parliament, and not contrive that Parliament to be new-modelled until it is fitted to their purposes. If the authority of Parliament is to be upheld as long as it coincides in the opinion of His Majesty's advisers, but to be set at naught the moment it differs from them, then the House of Commons will shrink into a mere appendage of administration and entirely lose its independent and effective character." Mr. Speaker, I get the impression from the structure and the makeup of this committee that that is exactly what this government is trying to do. Throughout the history of our great parliamentary democracies, the primacy of Parliament, the supremacy of Parliament, has been well established. And as a nation-state, no question, our country owes a duty of care to the security and the safety of our citizens. Parliament has a duty to ensure that our laws are properly in place, that they protect our citizens. We must also be sure that we do not overstep the boundaries that are set out before us, which is why we are not entirely opposed as such to the creation of a parliamentary oversight committee, one that may be similar to that of the United Kingdom. The challenge is, though, that the government of this day has refused to listen to the important input of not only the committee, but of members from this side of the House and from down the way from the NDP as well. They have refused to take the advice of our former public safety critic, the member from Durham, from the member from Victoria, who've brought important contributions to this debate, but nonetheless, the government has refused to go about amending this bill and creating this bill in a way that would truly protect the rights of our citizens. One specific element of this bill that I find troubling is Section 4, subsection 3, which reads, "The committee is not a committee of either House of Parliament or of both houses. As such, the committee is called, quote, the Security and Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians." It would be a misnomer to call it a parliamentary committee because it's not. And the government has structured it as such very much deliberately, I would say. I would suggest that it is being done so to exempt this committee from some of the normal practices that parliamentary committees of this House operate under. It is, in effect, I would argue, creating this committee to be a branch of the executive branch rather than the legislative branch of Parliament. And the government has failed to truly justify this approach. Further, examining the details of Bill C-22, it becomes clear the Liberal Cabinet is not looking to enhance parliamentary oversight, but rather to expand their own power. In fact, Section 21 of the bill gives the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister alone, in consultation with the Prime Minister's appointed chair, the ability to revise sections of these reports. In other words, it gives the Prime Minister the opportunity to force a redaction of the report before they are tabled in Parliament. This allows the Prime Minister to decide what Parliament can and cannot see. So much for a parliamentary committee. And I would remind this Liberal government of the words of one of our former speakers, who on April 27th, 2010, and I quote from the Speaker's ruling on that date, "The insinuation that members of Parliament cannot be trusted with the very information that they may well require to act on behalf of Canadians runs contrary to the inherent trust that Canadians have placed in their elected officials, and which members require to act in their various parliamentary capacities." In fact, it was members of that side, members of the now Liberal government, who argued vehemently at that time for the release of sensitive information. Now they have constructed a committee which would, in effect, give the Prime Minister, in consultation with his own appointed chair, the ability to redact and keep information from this chamber. A committee of parliamentarians, or what should be a parliamentary committee, should be the masters of their own domain. They should, in effect, be able to decide how to act within their own jurisdiction. Et je m'inquiète aussi de la façon dont le projet de loi C-22 autorise le cabinet à ne pas divulguer certains renseignements au comité. Selon les règles établies à l'article 15 du projet de loi, le comité ne reçoit pas de renseignements directement des ministères. Le comité doit...
Do we have translation? Seem to have a technical problem. Is translation back on? Let's give it another shot and see what happens.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je m'inquiète aussi de la façon dont le projet de loi C-22 autorise le cabinet à ne pas divulguer certains renseignements au comité. Selon les règles établies à l'article 15 du projet de loi, le comité ne reçoit pas de renseignements directement des ministères. Le comité doit plutôt présenter une demande à un ministre. Il est écrit au paragraphe 3, le ministre compétent saisit de la demande communiquée ou fait communiquer au comité en temps opportun les renseignements visés par elle auxquels celui-ci a un droit d'accès. L'expression en temps opportun est difficile de comprendre. Les ministres peuvent ainsi déférer leur réponse à la demande. Mon expérience de la façon dont les ministères peuvent temporiser pour ce qui est de répondre aux demandes des comités me dit que cette disposition est hautement problématique. Le projet de loi devrait imposer au ministère des délais de réponse stricts. Ce qui m'inquiète le plus est le fait que, après avoir affirmé vouloir renforcer le rôle du Parlement en augmentant l'indépendance des comités, le cabinet a choisi le président du comité. Nous avons appris par les médias que le député d'Ottawa-Sud présiderait le comité. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have no particular opinion on the member's performance from Ottawa South as a parliamentarian. I'm certainly sure that he's an exceptionally adequate parliamentarian and representative of his riding. But the fact is this chair was appointed by the Prime Minister. He was not elected by the fellow committee members who, in fact, haven't even been appointed yet and may not be appointed for several months to come. But yet the Prime Minister already appointed his preferred choice as chair of the committee, likely a year and a half before the committee is fully established. And I would remind the Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness that they ran on a platform of being open and accountable and transparent. But yet, they appointed a member with really no particular experience in the field of public safety or national security organizations to provide oversight of Canada's covert security and intelligence activities. But yet the Prime Minister chose such a member to serve. Why? Could it perhaps be that the member from Ottawa South does have a particular skill set, particular experience in one very precise area, and that is being a long-time Liberal backroom? He comes from one of the most famous Liberal families in Ontario. I wouldn't say infamous, that would be unparliamentary, but very famous political family, Liberal families. And could it just be that he is being rewarded for his long-time dedication to the Liberal Party? Or could it perhaps be that it's simply a reward for having been left out of cabinet when the cabinet was formed? Enfin, le projet de loi prévoit que le président du comité touchera une indemnité annuelle de 42 200 $. Cette somme représente plus de 3 fois de l'indemnité normale accordée au président du comité permanent, qui est 11 900 $. Dans ma circonscription de Perth-Wellington, 42 000 $ représente un bon salaire annuel. Le président de ce comité touchera l'équivalent de salaire d'un travailleur canadien en plus de l'indemnité parlementaire annuelle de 70 400 $ qu'il reçoit déjà. Mr. Speaker, there's no question in my mind that this Parliament and us as parliamentarians are open to a degree of parliamentary oversight of our national security agencies. This is something that our party is not opposed to. The challenge that we have as a Conservative opposition and as members of this august chamber is the way in which the Liberals have structured this committee, the way in which they have imposed their self-appointed chair onto this committee, the way in which they have introduced amendments at report stage, rejected some of the amendments of the all-party committee, simply goes to show that this is more window dressing than actually an effective oversight committee of this House. Mr. Speaker, for these reasons and so much more, this bill simply does not reflect the international examples that have been provided in the past of effective parliamentary oversight activities.